All right, good afternoon, everybody on the East Coast. I'm your Facebook meteorologist, Sean Bagden here, and we are live to talk to you today about a snowstorm that's going to be pushing through the area as we move through the overnight hours tonight and into the day tomorrow. Likely looking at some pretty intense snowfall rates coming into the overnight hours tonight and into those afternoon hours tomorrow, at least across this area. So we're going to break down the basics of what's going on here right now, and then we're going to go into the future, have a look at potential snowfall forecasts and where we're expecting the most snow as we go through the next 36 hours or so here, when we're expecting the majority of the impacts to unfold across the northeastern U.S., especially from New York, Long Island, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and all of interior New England here, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont. So what we are seeing right now on this map right in front of you here, you can see we do have this area of high pressure centered pretty much directly over the Montreal and Ottawa area right now. And this is expected to continue to move off to the east slowly here. This is creating some pretty nice sunny conditions with dry air in place across the area, getting funneled in. But this is what we are watching right now, about to move into the area. It's going to be this area of low pressure currently centered over the Ohio River Valley. This is going to continue to move off to the east as well, right along the Mason-Dixon line here, over Pennsylvania through central Jersey and just off of the New England coastline here. It's going to be a close miss along the coastline. What this is going to do is it's going to start pumping some warmer air into the region, as you can see by these tighter lines of consistent pressure here, or isobars. This is showing that we do have that warm air advection streaming in from the south, and that's going to push moisture up against this warm frontal boundary. You can see by this weird looking ridging pattern up in these isobars here. This is where you're going to get a lot of moisture pooling, warm air overrunning the cold air, and moisture getting thrown back into the cold air there. And that is generally where we expect the largest shield of precipitation to develop with these sorts of systems. This one, we are waiting a little bit for it to get its act together, this band here, but that is likely to do so throughout the day-to-day. And as we head into the overnight hours, we'll likely see widespread overrunning of that deep Atlantic moisture here, running into this lifting mechanism in the form of the warm front here. And we'll likely see some pretty widespread and moderate to heavy precipitation rates start to develop across this region right here as this system moves off to the south of New England. Generally, we look for the northern fringe of these storms to produce the most snowfall. Most of the wind is generally reserved for the southern end of these systems here. So that would be down into the Delmarva and the Mid-Atlantic area. But on this live, we are talking about New England. So those are the things we're kind of keeping an eye on right now. So we are going to bring it over to the models and have a look at how this is expected to pan out here. Let me just get us over there. There we go. We are now on the models right now, and things are looking very similar to what we were noting in our stream. I believe it was 2 nights ago here. Pretty similar story with the upper level maps. Here's that ridging we did have in place, that upper level ridging, and then we've got the trough axis right behind there. That's what we were looking at just now on the models. And you can clearly see that we have some pretty intense positive vorticity advection develop on the front side of this thing, running into that warm front here. We've even seen a little bit of a northerly shift in the system track here, which also moves the higher precipitation totals a little bit further north. Before we were thinking there's a 50-50 shot that New York City and Long Island could get in on some significant snow here, but now that we've seen that shift off to the north, continue trend off to the north, looking like we predominantly stay rain or sleet along Long Island and New York City now. Even into coastal New England, that's a bit of a 50-50 zone. Right now, they're kind of in the same position. Long Island and New York City were in just 2 days ago here with this forecast as we continue to see that northerly shift. So we're going to continue to hedge on those northerly shifts here. So anything you do see, we're going to try to bump it up north about 20 miles from what we are seeing on these model runs here, because they're not always correct. That is for sure. So here's that system we're going to be watching. It is streaming in, and it is streaming in from Alberta, it looks like here. So it is an Alberta clipper dropping south into the Great Lakes region here and interacting with some meager energy, I would call it, off of the New England coastline here. That will be enough to get things spun off, but that is likely what's causing that lack of cold air getting funneled into the coastline here. We just don't have everything together to create a rapidly deepening area of low pressure and that dynamic cooling aloft to bring in those colder temperatures from aloft to the surface with the heavier precipitation rates there. And there's that system as it does end up moving out to sea. What day is this here? This is going to be Sunday afternoon. So this is going to be a very quick hitter. Hasn't even started yet, but it's expected to start over the next couple hours here as we're expecting widespread ascent happening along that warm front there in association with that Atlantic and Gulf moisture getting streamed northward in front of the system. So definitely going to have to watch this. There we go. As we are expecting some pretty significant snowfall totals out of this system. It's just going to happen over a very short period of time. From what we have been seeing, somewhere in the 8 to 12 inch range is certainly not out of the possibility in some areas here. We're going to break that down here in a quick second. But the main point of me going over this is that 8 to 12 inches may not be a lot in some areas up there, but it all depends on how quickly it falls. If that happens over a couple days, might not be a big deal. But in this case, we're getting it over a couple of hours. So definitely the potential exists for this to be a big deal, especially with the more populated areas that are expected to be impacted by this storm system. So what we're going to go into next here, we're kind of going to go over timing. And as we go over the timing, or after we go over the timing, rather, we're going to start talking about how we're making the snowfall forecast, how fluffy is the snow going to be for you skiers out there, and things of that sort of nature. So he's not on here. We're still thinking Derek might join in here in a quick second. He's just finishing up a couple things, and he might hop on here for y'all. So there's what we're looking at right here. So as you can see, this is right now. We do not have any returns on the radar, and that is verifying out pretty well with what is actually happening right now. Even this lake effect snow is not even showing up on the current radar. But here's that moistening of the atmosphere occurring right here with those warming heights aloft, meaning warmer surface temperatures likely occurring in those areas. And you can see that in the models here, we are already seeing a little bit of upglide happening. This is likely due to the fact that there's moisture, ample moisture streaming up to the north. Is this moisture right here not yet interacting with any warm frontal boundaries for lift or anything? This is just likely the soggy air mass making its way off to the north here. But as we do go through time, you can see how we get a very different story through the next, say, 10 hours or so as precipitation outbreaks across the area as we get that phase between southern stream energy and northern stream energy here across the Great Lakes area. And you can see as this happens and moisture starts to stream north with that southern phase there, we are seeing ample precipitation breaking out across the Great Lakes area. And as this does happen, we are expecting this shield of precipitation and the associated low pressure to move off from the west to the east across southern and interior New England here. Looking like snow will be on the doorstep of New York City, likely by just after sundown tonight, it does appear. This is around 8 p.m. or so in New York City. We'll also be starting to see snow falling across the Capital District here, depending on how much dry air is lingering out in front of our system here. Sometimes we do those sorts of issues as we're getting Arctic highs pushed out of the area. Sometimes it does take a little bit for this precipitation to reach the ground. So wouldn't be surprised with that causing slightly decreased snowfall totals just to the lack of moisture initially that'll be in place across the area. As we move on into the next couple of hours, you can see Boston starts getting into the mix here about 3 hours after. So we're looking around 11 o'clock here with Boston starting to get impacted by moderate to heavy snow here. And the warm temperatures are starting to surge at this point here overnight tonight near the midnight hour out in front of this deepening area of low pressure across western Pennsylvania. And this is likely going to shift this rain snow line you see here right along the coast of Long Island here well to the north of this. We'll likely see rain as far north as, say, places like Warwick, Rhode Island, and about 50 miles inland here, I would say, is going to be your rain snow line. Once it's all said and done here, we'll likely see dramatically decreased snowfall totals south of this line and mostly rain for Long Island, coastal Connecticut, coastal Rhode Island, and southeastern Mass here, where those warmer temperatures are currently expected right now. So this will likely be the peak intensity of our system right here as we head into the early morning hours on Sunday here, late night Saturday into early morning Sunday. Probably just after midnight is when we're going to see the main thump of snow occur here across coastal New England. Probably not Long Island, as we were just mentioning, just due to that warmer air getting pushed in aloft. Might even just mix with sleet for a brief time and then turn over to all rain. Likely initially, as the models are showing here, we may have enough cold air to start with maybe a quick gusting to an inch of snow across a lot of those coastal locations here, but then we'll slowly get that precipitation turning over to more of a liquid or maybe even a sleet pellet variety there across coastal New England. But again, the further in you are, likely if you're more than 50 miles inland, you are way more likely to stay all snow and get a pretty good thump out of this winter storm here. Another thing we do want to mention is after the system passes through the area, you're not going to be out of the woods yet, especially if you are on a western facing slope within the Green Mountains of Vermont or the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Heck, let's just add the Adirondacks into here. As we have this little band of elevated instability pushing through the flow behind our main system here that's getting pushed off into the Atlantic. This is going to be a little wave of moisture getting pulled around the backside of the storm, and this is likely going to fire off the potential for a more impactful upslope snow event than we have been seeing of recently. I know Jay Peak's been getting in on stuff, but I've heard a lot of people complaining, especially in southern Vermont, that things haven't been going the best in the ski department recently. Not sure how true that is, but if you guys are not happy with how the winter is going, this is likely going to change it, especially for those southern Vermont resorts here. Also up towards Jay, but they always get dumped on. So they don't necessarily need it, if you know what I mean. But here's that second wave of moisture that's going to roll through in that northwest flow here. Lots of instability with it. So if the sun is able to come out with the colder air moving in behind our system here, we'll likely see some pretty intense snow squalls developing, especially downwind of the lake shores of Lake Ontario here. And then these bands of lake effect will likely be pushing into the southern Vermont mountains here, say from Killington south towards Mount Snow, depending on whatever the wind direction ends up actually being as this system starts to push through. And this looks to last for a little bit here. As you can see, these banding features across Vermont here in the Adirondacks linger for quite a good bit across the area. Maybe even for a couple of days. And there's that persistent dual lake effect snow band happening right here, likely affecting those southern Vermont mountains and then down into the Berkshires. Pretty impressive what we're seeing with this band right here. Could definitely see some locally enhanced totals along this, potentially adding several more inches onto final totals here across southern Vermont and western Massachusetts into the Berkshires there. And then we slowly get that moisture kind of waning as we head, what day is this? As we head into the evening hours on Monday here. So definitely quite a few things to watch. But looking at the overall totals here, let's have a quick look at this before I let you guys go for the day. Let me just make sure. Okay, perfect. So just also making sure we get these accumulations nailed out of the way for you as well. Sorry, we're just making sure Derek wasn't on quite yet there. But what we were going to be talking about here first is how much liquid equivalent precipitation is expected to fall across southern and interior New England here, as this is going to be how we're making that snowfall forecast. Of course, as we go through the time here, this helps us visualize where the heaviest banding features are going to be and things of that nature. So as you can see, this is going to be that warm frontal upglide band here that produces that widespread heavy precipitation, especially from Long Island into southern Vermont here, southern New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and then, of course, downstate New York here, even into the Capital District as well. Looking like extreme interior New England, not going to be getting as much as those off to the south here. With some really significant precipitation totals falling out of this system here, at least for a winter event. The next thing we're going to have to look at here after we now analyze the totals, looking like between a half an inch to say 0.7 inches could be expected there in varying amounts across southern New England, especially for those areas we did mention from the Capital District of New York down through Long Island, downstate New York there, Massachusetts, southern Vermont, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. We're going to have a look at how favorable the atmosphere is for snow growth across the area. And this is going to help us figure out the ratio of the snow, and then we can use that ratio to find what exact totals we're expecting from those sorts of precipitation amounts. So let's have a quick look at this right here. We're going to go back to when it's actually snowing. This is about right when that rain snow line kind of pushes through the area here. It does look like whatever New York does end up getting. Southern New York, especially New York City, Long Island there, it's going to be very high ratio snow. So you'll likely only see a couple, or very low ratio snow, sorry. And you'll likely only see at most a couple of inches, as that snow is expected to be melt away in the rain there after things get all warmed up there, as that southerly flow starts to push in off the Atlantic. All bets are going to be off for a big snowstorm here across Long Island, northern Jersey, and then into the coastline of southern New England here. Looking off to the north, you guys are not going to be as lucky or unlucky as some may say. Looking about 50 miles inland. So I'm guessing this line right here from, say, Hartford across 50 miles inland to the Providence area and into Plymouth, Massachusetts, that, and then over to like Poughkeepsie, New York, it looks like. Anywhere in that line there, if you are north of that line, I would be expecting some pretty significant snowfall totals by tomorrow morning out of this pretty significant event here. And anywhere south of that line, expecting mostly rainfall from this event. Generally, looking at these ratios up here for the valley locations, we're looking anywhere from 12 to 15 to 1, it looks like, for these valley locations. So that's going to be our range when we're looking at southern New England snowfall totals here, especially for the Pioneer Valley here, going through the Boston area, the Capital District, and also down towards that Poughkeepsie area north, up to, say, about the I-90 corridor. So let's do the quick math right here. So what we're basically going to do is take those snowfall ratios. We'll start off with the 12 to 1 there and multiply it by about a 0.6, because that's pretty much the average of what we're seeing there. So we've got that would suggest about 7 inches of snow, pretty widespread across southern New England here, especially in the valleys, going from the Pioneer Valley of Massachusetts over towards Boston, and then anywhere north of that line from Plymouth, Mass, Providence, Rhode Island, Hartford, Connecticut, and Poughkeepsie, New York. Anywhere north of that can expect likely those 6 to 10 inch totals to develop across this area here. Then, of course, you're going to get into those higher ratio snows in the cold air and the higher terrain of the Berkshires and the Greens here. Again, we are looking at around 0.75 inches of precipitation over in that area at about a 16 to 1 ratio of snow. So that would definitely suggest anywhere from 10 to 16 inches falling here. Even narrowing that down even more, I would say 10 to 14 inches across a lot of these higher terrain features of, say, the Worcester Hills in central Mass here, and the Berkshires out in western Mass, even into the Litchfield Hills as well, likely getting in on that. Going a little bit further off to the north here, and the Champlain Valley and Connecticut River valleys of Vermont, New York, and New Hampshire here, still looking like the northern reaches of these valleys are going to be getting that higher ratio snow. But remember, because we're having more cold, dry air funneling in from the north there, we're likely going to see lower totals or lower actual precipitation totals in these areas, just due to the fact that we're not going to be having as much precipitation falling across this area. So looking up in those localized valley areas there of northern New England, a lot of places we're looking at between 1/4 and 1/2 inch of actual precipitation, say north of Rutland, Vermont here, across to Springfield. Not sure what towns are there. I believe that's Lincoln, New Hampshire, across to, say, Bangor, Maine, and then or that's not Bangor, that's Bridgeton, Maine, and then just north of Portland, I'd say that's around the Lewiston area there. Anywhere north of that, between 1.25 inch of actual precipitation accumulation there. And just doing the math in my head right now, that would suggest anywhere from, well, actually, hold on. Let me just get an exact number for you there. Yep, that's 8.5. So we'll say 8 to 12 inches in those northern valleys there, given those higher snowfall ratios. It'll accumulate much more efficiently in these areas, so you do need less precipitation to actually create create those higher snowfall totals. So 8 to 12 inches would be in these higher valleys of northern Vermont here, likely into the Northeast Kingdom. That would be a spot we're thinking 8 to 12. But then once you get into those lower valleys there, from central Vermont north into the Northeast Kingdom and the southern Champlain Valley, you'll likely see those snowfall ratios elevated with those decreased precipitation amounts across the area. So looking at this right here, that'd be about 1/4 inch times that 15 there. So you'd be looking anywhere from 3 to, say, what is that, 7 inches? So 4 to 7 inches would be the most likely turnout here across these central valleys here of Vermont on the Connecticut River Valley side and into the Champlain Valley side, with higher totals likely in that 8 to 12 inch range occurring up and down the spine of the Green Mountains here, with locally higher amounts potentially reaching the 18-inch range, especially across these southern Vermont hills associated with this lake effect snow banding feature that we've been talking about here over the past couple minutes with this live stream. Going up into Maine here, this is the last bit we're going to touch on right now. It does look like a lot of the moisture is going to stay south of you there, but it's certainly not out of the question to see some impactful snowfall, especially in down east Maine here from, Eastport, Maine, all the way down through Acadia and Bar Harbor here, and then down through Portland, especially getting in on those heavier snowfall totals that we've already mentioned there. So definitely going to be something to keep an eye on. Generally looking like we're going to be staying below what's considered a plowable snowfall for a lot of northern Maine and central Maine here. The big question mark is how far does this shield of precipitation push, as it has been trending more north in current model runs. That's going to determine the northern extent of this heavier precipitation shield. But at this point, anywhere north of Lewiston right now, looking like we stay below that plowable 4-inch mark there, as we're really only getting into snowfall totals here around 1/4 inch. That would be that 4-inch line for this storm right here, from, where is it? Right around here, down through the Lewiston area, wherever this 1/4-inch line is right here. And then likely that heavier snow is going to be reserved for these coastal islands and inlets here of Maine. So going to be really interesting to watch this system. And as always with these systems, sometimes you get these mesoscale banding features just from the wind pushing in these banding features off of the Atlantic here. And it can act as some lake effect snow in a way here, especially across the Cape. So we're going to have to closely watch the potential for those ocean effect snow bands, those ocean effect banding features that generally develop with these systems as they push on out and are very progressive. So we will have to have a look at that as we head into the day tomorrow. As always, we're going to be making posts whenever there is some of those more interesting features developing across the coastline of New England here. But other than that, that should be about all we have to talk about today. And again, we'll update you if any changes do end up needing to be made. Have a great afternoon, everybody, and we will talk to you later.